Good evening, everybody. This is Kelly Blackman with How to Win at Everything. And I am here with my esteemed guest, Elaine Jacques. Yep, I know she doesn't look it, but she's very French. Very,
Mm.
very French. So, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to play us in, Elaine, with my cheesy intro. And then after that, we're going to talk some communication.
Have you ever wondered why you struggle to find success or fulfillment or lasting happiness? It's probably because your default wiring is set to lose. The How to Win at Everything podcast looks at real people who have struggled with the same insecurities, fears, doubts, and expectations and found a way to succeed. Why? Their brains are rewired for success. We dive into their thought patterns to show you how to rewire your own brain to win at everything.
All right. That was my intro. Elaine tells me that it is not cheesy, guys. So I'm just gonna take her word for it. So before we get started, let me first say good evening to all of my audience. Bernard, I see you there, brother. Good to see you. Um, and I want to go ahead and dive right in, Elaine, to um, kind of your let's call it your expertise, because I don't know if I know a person who has more accreditation behind what they do. If you were a guy, I would make the joke that a huge accreditation means, you got some sort of issues here, but you just seem to technically just have a lot of accreditation. So if you will, can you explain to us what you do and why you're great at it?
Well, thank you, Kelly, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here. And that is the most interesting way I've ever been introduced with all of my
You're a
certifications.
huge
So thank
accreditation.
you for that. So I am a leadership presence and leadership development coach. I say leadership presence because I work with leaders. They don't have to be executives. A lot of people are familiar with the term executive presence, but I like to say leadership presence.
Hmm.
And I do have, as you mentioned, a few certifications to go with that. So you had asked me, and I said I wasn't going to do it, but I'll do it just for you.
Well,
So
thank
I'm a
you.
conversational intelligence certified coach, and I'm also an accent modification instructor and a body language trainer, and I'm a medical speech language pathologist, and I'm an International Coach Federation certified coach. And
Hmm.
last but not least, I'm also a voice therapist, so a specialty in voice as well. And I'm working on yet another certification, but we'll save that one for next time.
All right, all right. So, bottom line, what I'm getting here is that you're probably qualified to help us learn about how to communicate and leadership. Is that about right?
Just a little, yeah.
Okay, okay, great.
I think
So,
we can cover it.
well, that's good because one of the things that I found to be probably the biggest gap between um, people who I observe as leaders and people who are not um, is going to be communication. Not necessarily skills or their ability to maybe do something well or something like that. Usually, it's how they actually lead and how they communicate and how they communicate that leadership. So, can you tell us? Let's start this off pretty broad. Can you tell us the difference between a leader who can lead with communication and then maybe somebody who doesn't do it very well? Like, what is the difference? How are we seeing those guys?
Oh, I think probably everyone in the audience can think of somebody that fits both of those categories right away.
Sure.
So to me, a great leader is someone who is empathetic and compassionate and actually cares about their people and is willing to take the time to communicate effectively so that they understand where's their team coming from. And, there's a term called co-creating solutions, where a leader will come to the team and say, okay, we have this problem and I want us to come up with a solution. And they actually mean that. They don't mean, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to tell you what to do, and good luck getting any of your ideas out of your head and into mine. So that would be sort of a touch on the other side of it, is someone who is a really great listener is much better at effectively communicating and really truly reaching their team and creating a team environment, instead of just, this is a group of people who all get paid to be here.
This makes me think about that difference between a leader and a manager, because in a lot of ways, I think people tend to think of leadership as giving orders or being in charge and that sort of thing. You specifically said that you don't have to be an executive for you to do this coaching. Um, does that kind of fall along those same lines? Like, so I'm just a regular guy. That's me, Kelly, the regular guy. Could I take on, would you take me on as a project, and how does that work? What does that look like to be coached by Elaine? Even though I know you told me specifically, stop sitting so far down in my seat. So like I feel like I've gotten a little bit of the coaching already. So go ahead. What does that look like for you?
Well, apparently it means I'm bossy about how you appear on
Yeah,
screen.
but look, I'm married, so I've been coached every day for the last 18 years.
Yeah. So good job stepping up.
Right.
So specifically on Zoom, what that looks like is that I want you to appear like your confident self. I want you to use good body language so you're connective. And so you can probably tell right now that I'm at eye level with my camera.
Hi.
And I also am midway in the screen. And as you and I were laughing about earlier, I played with my chair to make sure that you and I are about eye level with each other, because I want to show you respect as the host and show that we're in this conversation together. And I want to partner with you with this conversation. So I don't do things like it way down low, which is one of the things that I talked to you about. And I don't loom over you like this, when that can make you feel like I just want to be authoritarian and that I don't really want to partner with you, because it comes down to, and this is where the medical speech language pathology part of my background comes in. It comes down to the neuroscience of how that feels to you as my communication partner. If I am looking around, looking away, that breaks the connection that we have. And that helps you to feel like, I don't really want to have this conversation. And if I am looming over you, that makes you feel like, I don't really want to partner with you. I'm trying to be intimidating to you. And if I'm down low, which is one of the things that I talked to you about, it can make it be perceived by me in my brain like you don't feel as confident and that you don't want to partner with me because you're not really sure. So I said, Kelly, you're perfectly sure. I want you to set up. I want you to be partway through the screen and really be the host, because you are, and you're really good at it.
So you guys see right now, Elaine is doing two things. She is both coaching and bossing me around at the same time. So this is so we're off to a great start here. Um, I wanted to make sure that we were able to get a lot of these comments in. So Elaine, you can see the comments, right?
Oh, I am looking down at them now. I was looking at my
Okay. Oh yeah, because I don't want you to break that gaze
That's
and
right.
and respect me as a host, because that's what I need, obviously. I'm gonna I'm gonna just call on you to jump in and answer these anytime you want, because having an expert on a certain subject says that we want to tap into all of your knowledge, not just the things that I can think of to talk to you about. All right, so feel free to jump in and answer these things. Uh, as an audience, guys, feel free to jump in and ask Elaine anything. Um, I guess related to her 19 different certifications. All right, and then we can, we'll try to get each one of those in if we can. Um, so let's do this. I'm always like really interested in what my guest, like who they are. What kind of person does it take to become a speech therapist, voice therapist, accent person, ninja. Like, I really want to jump in and figure out who Elaine Jacques is, so that she corrected me earlier. I said Jacques, but she's like, no, it's completely French, guys. It's Jacques. So I really want to jump into what 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 led you into this. What was your path into getting into this sort of work?
Oh, that's a fascinating question, at least for me, because I think the path I've taken has not been straight. It's been more
Sure. Yeah.
circuitous. So,
Yeah.
so coaching, we'll start with my current career. Coaching is my fourth career, and I got into it because of my third career, which is speech pathology.
Sure.
And before that, I did a whole bunch of different things. I worked human resources, payroll, marketing, events planning, did some wedding planning, wedding photography.
Wow.
So, did a whole bunch of different things, a lot of executive assistant, administrative assistant.
Mhm.
Served on the board of a nonprofit organization,
Mhm.
a tech startup company. So, worked for a little tiny company that maybe some people know is Frito-Lay, a part of
Mhm.
PepsiCo.
Mhm.
Worked for
Mhm.
them as well. So that was my sort of, I guess we can lump that together loosely as my second career. And then my
Okay.
first career, because I like to call it that because it makes it sound fancy,
Mhm.
was between high school and college. For my bachelor's degree, I went overseas to Taiwan
Mhm.
and I taught English as a foreign language there and had a very mind opening experience just being in a completely different place. And this was, of
Sure.
course, before email and texting and all of those
Wait a
things.
minute. You're only 22. How was that before any of those things?
You're very kind. So it means that I'm 47, but thank you for that.
Check that box. Thank you.
That's right. Tick. All right. So that is sort of my circuitous career path getting to where I am. But I was a speech language pathologist. I still am, but I was a speech language pathologist for 16 years, working in hospitals, working with adults only because I'm not
Mhm.
brave enough to work with children.
Kids are worse. Uh, I say that because my 16-year-old is in the next room. Well, you know what? I'm sorry, like before we let you go into the into the newer stuff, what the heck kind of person goes to Taiwan to teach English as a second language? Like, I didn't even have my passport until I was like 30. Like, what prompted that? What kind of person goes and does that?
I guess that would be me.
Hmm. Hmm.
The kind of person who graduates from college and isn't, I mean, graduates from high school and isn't quite sure what she wants to do with her life, and so says, "Let's do something completely different,
I
and
see.
let's go to
Yeah.
the other side of the planet where we know no one and we don't know the language, and let's just experience a completely different culture and see what we can do about this whole teaching English thing." And I learned Mandarin Chinese during that process as well,
Hmm.
only conversationally, and I have forgotten a lot of it. But that is
Because you know we're going to put you on the spot, right? We were
so
going to
I'm
do the rest
backing
of this
away from
interview
that
in
right now.
Mandarin because obviously I also know Mandarin.
Of course, yes, you're fluent, and I'm not, so that's why I really wanted to be humble about that. So,
Thank you, thank you. Um, so okay, so you make this leap in high school. First off, I don't even know if my parents would have supported something like that. But so you make this leap, so you're obviously pretty adventurous and pretty uh, brave. But then you go into this other set of let's call them like mini careers,
mhm.
and that led up that's all blocked into your second career. Let me ask you, what was that like? Did you feel like you had direction? Did you feel like you were missing something? Was it I mean, obviously you didn't stay with any of those things in particular. So how was that period for you?
I think my second career, the lump of stuff that I did, probably I think is encapsulated by the term. There's a TED talk done, I guess it's a TEDx talk to be more accurate, but done by Emily Wapnick, I think. And she introduced me to the term multi-potentialite. And I
Ah.
said, "Oh, she's talking about me. That's me." Because it made me feel so much better that there are so many
Right.
things that I'm interested in. And they're loosely all encapsulated around helping people communicate and communicating
I
more effectively.
gotcha.
Communication and everything, because my bachelor's is in interpersonal communication, my
Mhm,
master's is
mhm,
in speech pathology, and
mhm,
then of course all of my aforementioned certifications are
mhm.
about helping people either use their presence or use their words or soft skills,
Gotcha.
all of those things. So my whole, I guess, life arc has been about communication and, interacting with people. But that time frame was just me kind of exploring and figuring out, what do I want to do? What do I enjoy? And I enjoy a lot of things,
Mhm.
apparently. And I still do. I have a lot of hobbies. I love learning languages. I think I'm up to bits and pieces of 10 or 11. I can't remember anymore. And it's just something that I really, really enjoy. I love
Mm,
being able to connect with people. I heard that. Hmm.
mm, mhm.
You're like, we're coming back to that one. I
Oh, yeah.
know. Can hear the little wheels turning in Kelly's head. So,
Mhm.
so it's for me, I love being interested in a lot of things because it keeps me interested. And it helps give me ways to connect with people on a variety of different things. So, working in hospitals, when you're talking with patients and just trying
Mhm,
to help them not focus on, it's painful here, I'm wearing this skimpy little gown, I don't want
mhm,
to be here,
mhm.
that we can talk about a variety of different things. And if I don't know about it, then I can ask good questions. And thank you. And I just love connecting with people and finding lots of different topics that are interesting to them and learning more things.
Can I tell you what's really interesting about this is I love the idea, the concept, and this is like a complete 180 from societally what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to pick a career, and then we're supposed to rack up $100,000 in student loan debt and then work through that career and be miserable the whole time and just barely be able to pay our student loans so that we can get to a place where we can retire and feel miserable. I think it's interesting and beautiful that you have such a free spirit about you that says try this, try this, try that, go here, go there. And I think that that's admirable and very, very unique. Um, when I was doing that, my parents told me I was a loser because I couldn't hold the job because I worked at the railroad and I was a correctional officer and I was an administrative assistant and I had like nine other things that I did before I really found what felt like to me a culmination of all the things that really made sense to me. So before we jump into more about your specifics, specifically about communication, how we can use this, what was the turning point? What was the defining moment that said, "Aha, this is what I'm good at. This is where I'd like to, shift my focus."
Oh, well, so first career to second career would be I came back and I went to get my bachelor's. So
Mhm,
that was sort of, nudging me off in the direction of, I like communicating with people and
mhm, mhm,
I like being able to do that more effectively. So how can I learn more about that? And then after my popcorn second career, if
mhm,
you will,
mhm.
just finding myself, I would get something really nailed down and just really organized and then be like, "Meh, okay, I'm ready for something new. What can I do now?" And so being suggested, hey, maybe you should take some of those, what color's your parachute, what color's your rainbow, what color's your whatever
Yep,
it is,
yep.
tests, and let's figure out, maybe we could direct you in some direction instead of you
I
being
like
here,
that.
there, and
Yeah.
everywhere. So that was where speech pathology popped up on my horizon.
Mm,
And so I went into that, dived into that, did not think that I would enjoy the medical environment. I definitely was not someone who could handle a lot of blood and yuck
mhm.
stuff.
Yep.
And so dove right into that and discovered I love it. And it's fascinating to me because of the intensity of,
Mm,
you have to stay on top of your game. The moment you start laxing back and not learning, you become what I consider dangerous for the patients,
mhm,
because you
mhm.
don't know the latest things and the reasons for doing things, and you're not doing the research and keeping up on it.
That makes
And
sense.
then you get blindsided by walking into a patient's room and they say, "Oh, are you here to do fill in the blank that they have read or heard or Googled or anything?" And you go, "No, why would I do that?" But if you don't know that, it can really take you by surprise. So
Mm,
the intensity of the medical environment is, of course, if you don't know what you're doing, you can hurt somebody. And that's
Mm-hmm.
certainly not something that I ever wanted to do. So that kept me very, very interested.
Hmm.
The pivot, if you will, to my fourth career came about because the flip side of that coin is the intensity can start to become very draining, in as
Sure.
much as the intensity comes from, as a speech pathologist, the majority of the conversations that I have with patients are related to end of life discussions.
Oof.
So
Oof.
things like, do you want a feeding tube now that you can't swallow safely anymore? Or would you like to talk about hospice? And then, of course, sometimes it's not the patient having that discussion, it's their
Yeah.
family members that are
Family.
having that
Yeah.
discussion. And so it coming down to the end of a day where 8 hours has been involved with having those types of discussions, which is an honor for me to be a part of that. But when my big win for the hour is everyone is crying in the room, but they still thank me for being there, that starts to take a piece of your soul every time you leave the
Whew.
room.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So that's when I started saying, there's something else that maybe I can do that is still helpful to people, is still a part of people's lives, but maybe we could back up just a step in the life cycle where the
Sure.
people that I work with and the people that I help are going to
Have
be
more
alive
life left.
tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So okay, you got to this point, and what did you decide? What was the first thing that you were like burned down by the fact that this is such an intense life kind of moving thing all the time every day? Did you automatically say fourth career got you check mark, or what happened for you?
Oh, I think I bumbled my way into it probably about the same way I did all the rest of my careers.
Mm,
It's just starting
mhm,
to look around and starting to, of course, because this is what I do, starting to take classes and
mhm,
just kind of
mhm,
saying, what does interest me? What will be the thing? Is one of my hobbies something that I want to go into, take from, the more side hustle standpoint over to,
mhm,
hey,
mhm,
this is something I really want to do. And coming across the concept of coaching and saying, oh, what's that? That seems interesting. So I spoke to a friend who also pivoted from another career to coaching and said, well, what did you think? Are you happy you did it? Is that something you'd recommend? And he actually
mhm,
recommended his coaching training program, which is what I chose to pursue because they require a graduate degree to participate. And so that, made the nerdy part of me really happy, I guess, to say this will be good. This will be rock solid and good science will
mhm,
be involved with this. And loved the coach training program and love
mm.
the concept of helping people actually do some of the things that I have done, which is to figure out what do they want? What lights them up? What helps them feel fulfilled? What helps them find their purpose? And then how can we get them there?
We took about 15-20 minutes to get through that, but that felt like a whole lifetime of stuff. That was awesome. So I guess my next question then becomes, when you're doing your day-to-day thing now, how does it how do you feel about it? Like, do you get that rejuvenation of helping people, or how does that work for you now? How does it feel for you now?
I love coaching from the standpoint of when I get to the end of a conversation, and this answers the question that I didn't really answer before. We just had fun talking about how I've tortured you on Zoom. But
Hmm.
one of the things that I do as part of each coaching session is we can talk about whatever, we can do whatever. But when it comes to the end of the conversation, my question to each of my clients is, what's your action step? What are you choosing to do to take yourself forward? And that will be the thing that I'll be your tough love cheerleader, and I'm going to
Hmm.
help you get there, and I'm going to hold
Hmm.
you accountable.
Accountable. That's
And I
right.
want it to be realistic because I've had some people, oh, I'm going to do this little tiny thing. Okay. Is that realistic? Can you do more than that? And then some people say, well, I'm going to get up and I'm going to, I use the example of climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And I'm like,
Hmm.
maybe we could break that down a little. Maybe we just walk around the block a couple of times before we jump
Right.
off the couch and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. So really kind of being that nudging, of where's realistic for you, but I want you to move forward. I don't want this to just be talk and then you leave and you feel all better and I feel
Hmm.
better because I helped by listening. I want you to actually move forward because I want you to achieve your goals and I want you to be taking steps towards that. So that's where my U plus 1% today is, that we're going to take you, the fabulous you that you are, and we're going to add 1% to it, but we're going to do it today. We're not going to wait. We're not going to do the whole, well, someday I'd like to. No, 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 no. Today. Today we're going to pick something. Even if it is a small something, we're going to pick
Hmm.
something.
I love that. I love that. Be even more awesome, right?
So close.
Oh, that wasn't it. Be
Close.
even more. Ah, amazing.
Amazing.
Well, I would tell people to be more awesome. So that was just me putting a Kelly spin on it.
That would be the Kelly
That's
spin.
that's that's what
We
I'm
will
gonna
take
go
the
with.
Kelly spin. It,
Yeah,
it still fits with my hashtag, which is Bima. So amazing, awesome. It's
that's
really
right.
good. Say
I,
awesome.
so I enjoy this as a concept, but now let's go ahead and put it into let's put it into action. Let's put it into some real world application.
Okay.
So, well, first, let me ask you: when you see a person and you start working with them, are there certain people who can't lead? Are there certain people who like you see them and they can't pick up the skills to be good leaders?
I think it depends a lot on willingness.
Okay.
Someone has to be willing to participate with coaching because coaching isn't easy. Coaching is, you're going to make some changes, and some of them
Yeah.
may be pretty basic, as in fundamental, foundational for you.
Yeah.
And change is hard.
Yep.
Even good change is hard, and it can cause stress, and it can cause the people around you to feel stress. Like every time, and you touched on this about how your parents were with you about your various jobs that you,
Mhm. Mhm.
when we change careers, when we do various things, thank you, Bernard, when we do various things, it causes a ripple effect into the
Mhm.
environment around us. So I'm going to use the example, my mom, her generation, really one of the things that they value most is stability
That's
and
right.
security. And so for her, she did do the stay in the horrible job and stay there forever, and she has a pension, and that's fabulous, and she's retired and she has fun with that. So that's great for her. For me to stay in a job where I feel like my life is slowly being sucked out of me isn't worthwhile to me.
That's
And
right.
I would rather go without, extra coffees, or I don't even drink coffee, but it's a good example for most people,
Mhm.
to go without certain things in order to feel fulfilled in my job. And so to be able to help people do that is something that really drives me forward. And I really get excited when I see someone else be able to do that,
Mhm.
and recognizing that I totally lost my train of thought there for a second, Kelly, but I found it again.
Oh, I thought you were just so excited by what you were talking about that you're pausing for emotional effect. But I'm sorry, but are you
Let's
are
go
you
with
back
that.
on
Let's go
track?
with that. That sounds way
Yeah.
better than I derailed. So what I was going to say is keeping in mind that when I made the change into coaching, it was actually pretty stressful for my mom.
Mhm.
And I had to
Yeah.
actually sit her down and say, Mom, I'm going on this journey. I would love for you to come along with me. If you can't do that because you're so hung on to the
That's
security and
right.
stability, then I'm just not going to be able to talk to you about this because it's important to me and I am going to do this. And I would love for
Mhm.
you to come along for the ride. And bless her heart, she's like, I really want to. I'm going to try.
Mhm.
And it just had some bumps along the way of her going, yeah, this is wonderful, and oh my gosh, you shouldn't be doing this, and I just wish this and this, and that's okay, because that is one of her core foundational values,
Sure.
is just to hang in there, and it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you're happy or not. And I really appreciate that. But there are people in my life who haven't been able to come along for the ride, if you will.
Mhm.
And because they're like, oh, there goes Elaine again. How long is this one going to last? And I'm like, hey, the last one was 16 years. I think I
There you
get some
go.
credit
Not
for
that's not bad.
that. But it's okay.
Mm.
And I'm just going to throw this out there for people who haven't heard this. People come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And wisdom is knowing the difference between those. And job changes, career changes, making changes inside of yourself may bring out that okay, that season is over or that reason is
Hmm.
over. Or, hey, guess what? This person did come along with me for the ride, and maybe they are one of my lifetime people.
You kind of like that. Um, so if we're moving forward into so you kind of touched on the fact that with coaching in general, and I can definitely attest to this. Excuse me. There has to be a measure of willingness to change, to hear. I mean, I wouldn't say criticism, but to hear that maybe you need to pivot, maybe you need to change stuff, maybe you need to work on something. When you're talking about leadership, because a lot of the people, chiefly, I know we're on LinkedIn, and there are a lot of people who are on LinkedIn who are saying, I want to be an entrepreneur. And that inevitably puts you in this place of having to either lead people or lead yourself or interact with people in a way that allows you to well, at least put you in a position to achieve these things that are loftier than just sitting on your couch. Um, that being said, if we're talking about leadership specifically, what is the main thing that you're seeing that people maybe lack or have an issue with? What's the hardest heel, or at least the initial hardest hump to get over?
I would say for people who are what I call emerging leaders, so people who are stepping into those leadership roles, whether or not that's as an employee and they get promoted into a leadership role, or that's I've stepped off the corporate ladder and I'm doing the entrepreneurial thing, is to recognize there's a big difference between doing the job
Hmm.
and leading a team of people who are then doing the job. And really recognizing that you no longer can do everything.
Yeah,
And for someone like me, that's kind of hard because I love doing everything, but being
you know
able
that
to let
feeling. Yeah.
go of those things and being able to say, okay, now I'm leading a team. How can I empower them to do the things that I hired them to do? Or suddenly I'm their supervisor.
Yep. Yep.
I'm the one that's their team lead, whatever your title is. Just to step into that role is often really, really hard for people because we're so used to, I'm really good at this one thing. And some people do get promoted simply because, well, you've been doing this job for 20
Hmm.
years. We got to
Hmm.
promote you because we don't know what else to do with you.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you have the people skills to do it. So going back to what we were talking about before, having the willingness to say, okay, I've got great skills to do the job, maybe the technical skills to actually do the job, but now how can I help empower a group of people to do that job? I think is probably one of the first things that at least I've experienced with my clients who are stepping into leadership roles, that's a really difficult thing for them to let go of. One of my clients said to me, well, I'm just not sure what my coworkers are going to, think. Like, are they going to think I'm being all bossy and everything?
Mm,
And I said, you need to step away from the idea that you're their friend
mm,
and that you're buddy buddy with them because now you're in a leadership role. So there will be things that you are privy to, if
sure.
if you
Yeah.
want to say that, that are more upper C-suite level that you're privy to now that you weren't before, that maybe you can't share right away because things are still coming down the pike or whatever. There are
Hmm.
various things in the corporate environment that keep news from necessarily flowing all that quickly.
Mm,
And so recognizing your role is different now, and it's okay for you to lead because that's what you're there for.
mm.
You're not there to just hold hands and cuddle and, have fun coffees together. You can still do that, but you need to recognize that at the end of the day, you are the responsible, accountable party for what is your team doing?
So, how do you? So, as if you're in a leadership role, or even in a leader in the sense that you're an entrepreneur, so you have a stake in what's going on, and this is your business. How do you balance that out? Because I've seen so many partnerships become strained because of the fact that there's a there's kind of a disconnect with what I should be doing, what I'm responsible for, what I'm accountable for versus what I should delegate and how I should delegate it. There seems to be a real disconnect between people when we talk about leadership. How do you know, well, first off, how do you know if you have a balance there and your ability to lead while also, I guess, um bringing people along with you at the same time, how do you know if you don't have that balance? Like, what are you doing in that place?
I would say a lot of leaders struggle with that, especially right
Mhm,
at first, and then in times of stress, where something
mhm.
big like 2020 happens and,
Yeah, yeah.
suddenly the rules shift and what used to work doesn't work anymore. That those are the kinds of environments where people feel a lot of stress.
Mhm,
And they start to feel that what you have referred to as a lack of balance.
mhm.
Um, because there is the whole concept of servant leadership, of getting into the trenches and doing the work as
Yeah,
well. And that
yeah.
is important when your team needs an extra hand that you provide it. But recognizing when maybe they don't need the extra hand and you're just softly micromanaging, and you're stepping in because, well, I'm helping out. But no, you're not
Mhm,
actually helping out. You're just making sure that they do it the way you want it done. So there is that balance of trusting, and I'm going to talk about this from the entrepreneurial side of it just for a moment, of you've hired these people for the talents that they have brought. You saw something in them that you don't have or that you wanted more of.
mhm,
So let them do it and be willing to go, okay, I can step back.
mhm.
I can let them do that. And that's a really big deal, especially when this is my baby and,
Yep.
this has been something that I've grown up from nothing, and don't ruin it, don't break it,
Mhm,
and big stress comes. That can be really, really hard for leaders, but just stepping into the role of saying, let's have a conversation
mm,
about these are the issues that I'm having. And Brene Brown talks about it from the vulnerability standpoint.
mhm,
If you are willing to step in and say, you know what, I'm having a little stress here because I'm having trouble letting go. I
mhm,
hired you because I think you're awesome. We're going to use your word. I think you're
mhm,
awesome. And I want you to be able to step fully into your role, and I want to be able to empower you. So, how
mhm.
can we work that out so that I feel like I can trust you? And I really want to empower you. How can I get comfortable with that? How can I help you be comfortable with that? Because
Nice.
oftentimes, if you're feeling distressed, the other person is going to feel that on a mirror
Yeah.
neuron standpoint of we pick up on each other's behaviors, even if it's not said. And so if I'm sitting here going, you're
Mhm,
going to feel that, whether or
mhm,
not you could even see that, you could hear that, you could feel it even over the phone. Just that little bit of disquiet in me. So having the open, honest conversations, and I like to say laying the ground rules of saying we're going to have a respectful conversation, and at the end of this, we're going to co-create a solution that we
mm,
can both be happy with. Oftentimes, kind of does the put your cards out on the table and helps you to feel more safe in being
mm,
vulnerable with your team. And then they'll do the same. Whereas maybe if they felt like you're not struggling at all and you're doing this and you got it all, and they think, well, why did you hire me?
mhm.
And so
I
being able to say that, say, boss, I just feel like you hired me for these reasons, but you're not letting me do it.
Let me do it.
So, is that because you don't trust me or you don't think I can do it? Is there another certification that I can get that will help you with that? Sorry,
That's,
throw that in.
no, I think it's a great slash interesting slash a little bit scary concept because what you're talking about now is and guys, you want to write this down as one of these foundational pieces, self-awareness, because as what I would imagine is that it is much harder as an employee or as a consultant to come in and say, "Hey, you're still holding the reins here, but this is my job. This is what I'm accountable for." Versus having the person who is paying the bill to say, "Hey, let me work on this feeling, this thing. Let me be aware of the fact that this is where this tension is coming from." And honestly, I when I'm looking at leadership, when I'm looking at C-suite officers, when I see people who are doing it well, there is this interchange, and there's this humility that says, excuse me, that says I may be wrong, I may not have it. Or even to bring in someone says it may be a case where I need help with this, and that has got to be pretty tough, because on the flip side of that, what you're talking about is somebody who is probably so led and so directed, and kind of like you said, this is your baby, this is the thing. This is what defines you. How do you, if you're the entrepreneur, if you're the boss, if you're the quote unquote leader, how do you recognize that in yourself? How do you recognize that trait? Is it just based on you're feeling some issue there or some problem? How do you know?
I think for most people who've been employees first before they step into a leadership role, that they recognize how they felt
Hmm.
if they have that. And the key term is self awareness,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
say, am I doing that thing that I really couldn't stand when my old boss did it to me? And
Sure.
it's that being able to turn the mirror around and say, how do I want to be as a boss? One of the teams that I worked with, I was invited by a company to come in and work with their leadership team. And I said, I want you to do a good boss, bad boss list.
Mm,
And I
mm,
want you to think of your favorite things that, a good boss in your mind, what a great boss does. And didn't use the term manager or leader, but just boss. And
mhm.
I said, and what's a bad boss? And of course, everyone had plenty of things to say on
Sure.
both sides of that list. And so I said, okay, so let's turn that around. What do you think your employees, the people who are on each of your team,
Ooh.
what do they think about you? And where do you fall on your good boss, bad boss list? And there were some like kind
Mhm,
of looks
mhm.
going around the room. And then we dived into that. And I think that was a helpful way of kind of reminding all of us, we've all started somewhere. For most of us, we didn't just spring straight into entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
We started somewhere else in a job, whether it was, I'm going around and delivering newspapers. Well, you had a boss that gave you those
sure.
newspapers, those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So it's taking that moment to say, how do I want to show up for my team? And what do
Mhm,
I need to do to make that happen? And then the vulnerability that comes with that, to say, yeah, I'm going to be humble and I'm going to say I don't have it all
mhm,
together. One of the little, I guess, quick tips that I'd love to share with your audience is that I call it the 2-question conversation. To say to your boss or to say to your team, every week we are going to meet one on one and we're going to have a quick 2-minute, 2-question conversation. And if you're really brave as the boss, it can be a 4-question, but it's very quick. So the 2 questions that can go both directions are, what's one thing that I'm doing really well? That's the first question. And
mhm,
as an employee, looking at your boss and asking them, well, what does your boss need to be able to answer? They need to be watching for, what are you doing well? Because that's going to
mhm,
come up in this conversation. So what's one
mhm,
thing I'm doing really well? And what's one thing that I can improve upon? And that allows for growth. That allows for investment into each one of your teams. And then, of course, if you're really brave as a boss and you can handle it, which not, you can't always do this, but you can say, okay, ask me those same 2 questions.
mhm.
And so your employee then has to answer for you, what's one thing I'm doing really well and what's one thing I can improve upon? And of course, that second question's a little stingy sometimes when
Sure.
it comes to being a leader, because there are people who are like, I'm doing great. I'm doing really well. And really? You you
Yeah.
you don't like that? Like, my communication style doesn't match yours at all. And that kind of doesn't jive for you. Um, so I like to have people do that because it
Mm,
continues that open conversation. It makes it a regular occurrence that's on your schedule, and it's not a long conversation. This is not, we're going to dive into everything and anything and, oh, did you hear about something? None of this. There's 2
mhm,
questions, answers, and move on.
mhm,
And I like to say, your brain will go out and look for data to support whatever decision you make.
Each journey.
So
Yeah.
if you get up in the morning and you say, oh my word, I didn't sleep well, it's going to be a horrible day. Well, guess what? You're going to have a horrible day because your brain's going to go, yep, okay, I'm going to find every single thing that
Mhm,
makes this a horrible day and I'm going to feed
mhm,
it to you. Whereas if you get up and you say, wow, my head really hurts, but I bet I'm going to have a super fun day anyway because I'm going to walk around like I have a balloon over my head. And your brain is going to go out and it may give you some really weird stuff based on the balloon, but it's going to find information that
right.
will
It's gonna
support that.
support it.
So
Mhm,
to switch back to the two questions, that first question, your boss brain is going to have to be looking for what are your employees doing right? Because you're going to need to have something for every
mhm,
single one of your employees every single week. Now, the bigger your team gets, then you need to delegate this down
mhm,
to your
mhm,
team leaders and then they do it with their teams. But it's a really nice way to touch base with each other, make sure you're still communicating
mm,
clearly and that everyone likes to be appreciated and that you're finding ways to say, you know what, you're doing this really well. And that also reminds you as a boss, to touch back on what we were talking about,
yep,
one of the things that you find stressful is I have to do everything myself. Well, if you're looking for what they're doing really well, it
yep.
feeds to your brain, my team, these people that I hired, they're doing really, really well. And
That
I
makes sense.
enjoy complimenting them on that. And I enjoy appreciating for that. So you're going to lower your stress, your cortisol, and be able to delegate and empower and feel good about it.
Mm. So I hope everyone just wrote all of that down. If not, you want to check the replay on that one because that was awesome. Thank you so much, Elaine, for breaking that down. Um, what I was also hoping to do is to take advantage of you. Yes, I said it. I want to take advantage of all those skills that you have because when it really comes down to the way we show up, like I mentioned earlier about you telling me to raise my seat and to be higher up and that sort of thing, and stop putting my forehead really far into the picture because the world we live in right now is the Zoom video conference world, and a lot of our business, a lot of our work is done through this medium. How can you give us some tips, some tools, maybe even hacks on how to show up better, how to show up in our most leadery selves?
So, a couple of the things that we already talked about are just the technical setup, and that is make sure that you're not doing the. And I see this a lot. I see the laptop is tilted back, and the person is like leaning over, and that's super not attractive, and this also is not attractive. Um, so it's making sure that okay,
Hmm.
gotta make sure Kelly and I are eye to eye here. Um, Making sure that the way I know, see, don't do that. The way you're showing up is that you give the impression, you give the perception to the person you're speaking to that you want to see eye to eye. We talk about that. Oh, we're not seeing eye to eye. Well, this is a way that your brain perceives that is if
Hmm.
you're not staying eye level with your camera, wherever that is on your phone or on your laptop, stay at eye level. And when you're speaking, you look at your camera. You don't look down at the screen because then that breaks the eye contact with the other person. Even though when I'm looking at my camera, I can't see you. I can just like have this perception of you off to the side. But that is a way to maintain that connection with your audience. Thank you. And it is a really, I'm just going to pause here for a moment. It is a very big pet peeve of mine when people stare at other places on the screen and they don't look at their camera when they're talking. And I'm going to say that even for when you're recording your videos for your own messages
Hmm.
that you want to put out in your content, please, for the love of all that is holy and good in the world, this is seriously one of my pet peeves. I've done, I don't know how many videos on this. Look at your camera. And it is one of the quickest, easiest, free things that you can do to make a better connection with your audience instead of looking down at yourself. I know you're pretty. I know that you'd rather look at yourself, but look at me
I
if you're
struggle
going
with that so
to
often. Yeah.
talk. Because it's the same as if you're in person and someone stares down at your shoes instead of looking in your eyes. You feel that disconnect. You feel like, it's like, what's wrong with my shoes? Like, why
Hmm.
aren't you looking at my face?
I love that you went classy and said shoes because yes, this is what every guy is always staring down at,
Yes,
always
I
shoes.
I know. I know. You're checking out the brands. I'm aware of that.
That's right.
I'm speaking to all you guys out there who have the shoe fetish. So we won't discuss anything else. I have done a video recently about eye gazes, and there are 4 types,
Mhm,
and I cover them. So just go back and watch that one if you need some extra assistance in that
mhm.
area. So for all of you with the shoe fetish, I covered that already. So that was for you, Kelly, because I
Thank
know
you.
you're all
I'm a
into
shoe guy, yeah, yeah.
shoes that I don't even know the brand names of. So, so
Oh,
that
but I'm
would be one
sorry.
thing. Just
Yes.
a technical thing is don't forget that what you do in person is what people appreciate when you're doing it over videos and over video conference calls. So
Mhm,
make sure that when you are speaking, you look at your camera. And when someone else is talking, you can go ahead and look down because then you can absorb what their facial expressions look
mhm.
like. But when you're talking, look at your camera. I'm just going to say it like 3 more times. Look at your camera. It is that much of a pet peeve for me.
I'm gonna try to do that right now. I'm looking at my camera. Does it look like I'm looking at my camera? It feels so unnatural.
Well,
I'm just
see,
I'm just gonna go back to looking at you. All right.
okay. All
Is
right.
that
You can look at me. Because the thing is, what you and I talked about earlier is you're wearing your glasses, so I can't actually see your eyes,
yes.
which I'm going to say actually breaks. See,
Okay.
that's much better. I feel much
Yes.
better.
Now, well, as I'm talking to you right now, I am looking at the little light of where
Mhm.
my camera is. This is yeah.
And it does. It feels very awkward, which
Is
is
it
why when you're talking, you look at your camera, and then when you're listening, you can look down because
gotcha.
then you're able to kind of get both parts of the conversation. And
Hmm.
this is one of the weird things about right now where we're all doing this over the internet is that's one of the ways you have to compromise because in person of course you're not looking back and forth you can
Right.
just see their eyes and they're right there and that works but for right now this is how we have to make eye contact because this is how you feel that I'm making eye contact and then when I look down that's how I feel you're making eye contact with me.
And tell me again now. That is us bringing. That is us. The person who's making that video or whatever. That's us basically making a connection
Yes.
with our audience. Okay.
Yes. And it is the quickest way. We're going to go into neuroscience just for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear people talk about oxytocin. They call it the cuddle hormone. I like
Mm-hmm.
to use the professional term and say it's the connection hormone. But
Mm-hmm.
use whatever term you want. It is how we perceive a true connection, a meaningful connection with somebody else, is to make that eye contact. And when
Mm-hmm.
you break it and you look away, which 70% of the time when we're in person, we need to be making the good eye contact. There's slight variations based on culture, of course, and you want to be cognizant of that and
Mm-hmm.
sensitive to that. But in general, about 70% of the time, and then you can blink because staring at someone without blinking is creepy.
I was gonna
So
say yeah.
70% of the time, you want to be making the good eye contact, and then the rest of the time, you can glance away briefly. You want to, when you're on video conference calls, to bring it back to our current topic, when you're on video conference calls, make sure that you're not doing things like staring off screen and acting like there's something really interesting over there. I'm going to tell you that's my bookcase and I was just talking to nothing, but you don't know that. And so that makes you feel like what's over there? Like what am I missing? And the
Mhm.
moment you introduce that what am I missing to your audience or to the other person you're speaking to, you break that connection. And the place that we perceive social rejection is the same place that we perceive physical pain. So when
Mm,
they do fMRIs, because I am a nerd, so I've never done this to somebody, but I know about these things, is they will test someone and they will say, we're going to put you into a social rejection environment. They don't tell them that. They just show them pictures that make them
mhm,
feel left out. The same section of your brain lights up as when you are physically hurt. So
mm,
that's something that when you are a speaker and you break the eye contact and you make it seem like you're not really listening or really paying attention, you're actually making it painful for your audience.
ooh. Okay, I think we got that part. What about what I've heard before is body language is going to be such a huge component. But even still on Zoom or on video conferencing, how does that show up? So I know we talked about the eye and the level and that sort of thing, and maybe being sunken down in the seat. But how else does that show up with this conferencing? With the video conferencing? Like what are things we can do? What are things we maybe shouldn't do?
Okay. So one of the things that you shouldn't do, and I'm going to pick on you, Kelly, because, well,
Mhm.
you're right, here and I'm talking to you. So one of the things we shouldn't do is have things that obstruct our eyes because of
Hmm.
course that eye contact is that important. So
Hmm.
I'm just going to throw it out there for all of you who have profile photos where you're wearing sunglasses or something else obstructing your eyes. You're breaking that connection with
Mm.
potential clients, with potential networking people right there. So I'm just going to invite you to retake your profile photos right now.
Senior
So
Posada,
besides that, so
Payasada, she is talking to you right now. So
that's
I'm
right.
looking at your photo, buddy. I'm looking at it.
That's right. So if you got your eyes covered, man, you've broken the connection. It doesn't work for me and it doesn't work for other people. It breaks that. It makes people feel like you're hiding something. It
Hmm.
makes people feel like you're not being honest. And
Hmm.
all of those things are the subconscious impression they get, which may make a difference in how many people are willing to connect with you and work with you. So
Mm.
just throwing it out there for all the entrepreneurs, your profile photo does matter. So the similar things are, and this is where I'm going to pick on you a little bit, Kelly.
Hmm.
When you and I had our very first conversation, you were leaning way back and
Yes,
you
that
were
is
way
me.
down near the bottom of your screen. And the
Yeah.
two things that says to me, and we're actually still at kind of eye level right now, so this is kind of fun. But when you lean back, it's similar to when you are in person and you lean away from somebody. And that says, I'm not as interested in this conversation. I'm pulling away. I don't really want to be close to you. And that sends that message of, I'm not really interested in
Mm.
you, in this
Mhm.
conversation, in what you have to say, or I find it averse, or I'm feeling uncomfortable. And the moment you start doing that, you start instilling that in someone else's brain on a neurochemical level.
Mm.
So that was one of the reasons why I said, Kelly, you got to lean forward, because
Mm.
what do we do
Right.
when we're really interested? We lean forward and we get all excited. And I am a percher. I sit on the very front little part of my chair all the time because that's how interested I am in all of my conversations. I can't stand leaning back and I'm like, Kelly, what are you doing? So it's again, think about what you do when you're in person and think about how you are perceived when you're on a video conference call. If you're leaning away from your camera, if you're looking away, if you're doing other things, it's the same as if you do that in person. But you want to
Mhm.
be thinking, how do I show up on the screen? So the other thing that you'll see me do is I keep kind of checking, where are my hands? And it's a little harder because the screen is
Mhm.
not quite
Mhm.
as expansive, but if you're going to make a hand gesture, so this is getting into your question about body language. If you're going to make
Mhm.
a hand gesture, you want to make sure it's visible enough so that people can tell what you're doing. Because one of the other people that I worked with would do a lot of like, you could
Yeah, I
see
can.
his
Here,
arms
hold on. I'm gonna
are doing
solo
stuff,
you so you can
but you
show us
couldn't see
this.
what he was doing. And I said, you are, oh, and look, I'm all by
Yes.
myself, so I can make lots of gestures now.
There you go.
So if you are on a screen where you have space, it's very important to do those gestures out away from your face, because if you're doing it here, then of course you're obstructing your face and you make it harder for people who lip read because maybe they're hard of hearing. You also break that eye contact and you're doing the body language version of, I don't want to be close to you. I'm doing a blocking. So
Mhm.
it is important to try and keep it, off to the side of your face, not do it right in front of your face.
Mhm.
So the things like what you're doing right now, because, we've not talked about that ever before, is having your hands in front of your mouth or
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
face.
Mhm.
I'm just going to pick on you because you're right there.
I see. I see. These are things that we've definitely talked about. So
I
good to see
wasn't
Elaine pick on me.
going to.
All right, just go on.
I'm just gonna cover my face. So
Mhm.
those are things that if you have your hand underneath in a supportive type of environment, that's okay. But if you have it in front of your face, that's that blocking. And again, how that's perceived on a subconscious level is you're hiding something or you're not as honest. And none of those things you want to come across as.
Mhm. Mhm.
We have talked about that if maybe your frontal lobe is going crazy and you're trying to keep yourself from saying something because, sometimes
Sure.
there are
Because
heated
I'm a blurter. I'm a
you might
blurter. I will blurt some things out. Yeah.
sometimes it's a good idea to keep your mouth covered because it helps it to keep from coming out. But you need to be aware that that is how it's perceived, is you're hiding something, you don't really want to communicate openly. And of course, it comes across as you are being dishonest.
Whew. I always like to dig into the personality of my guests because I think that's what really enhances like how fascinated we can be with your information. But boy, like I'm gonna have to have you on again, Elaine, because there are so many things. Now, uh, in the meantime, because we are coming up at the end of the hour, I want to make sure that you tell people where they can find you because you do have a lot of videos about a lot of this stuff where people can actually watch and really get some of this instruction that they need. So tell us where to find you.
Okay. Well, I am only on LinkedIn, is what I like to say. So Elaine Jacques, all squished together. Go with the French spelling. It's there. And look for the red hair and the big smile. That would be me. I do have, if you want a quick, easy way to access most, but not all of my videos, I do have a YouTube channel. And that is mentioned in my profile description way
Mhm,
down near the bottom because that's just a repository for videos. I did do a webinar earlier this year about how to do more effective conference calls, video Zoom conference calls. So if you're
mhm.
interested, they're about, I think, 32 minutes each. So they are there and you will hear some of the same things. And I will say it again, look at your camera. Just look at your camera. Like seriously, look at
Let me just tell you, Elaine, I've really enjoyed you today, and this this
exactly like that. Exactly like don't do that. My least favorite thing is really when people are recording the videos and you see them, they're just looking down at their phone because they're looking at themselves. And I'm going to say, I know you're pretty. I know you're really, really pretty, and you do look fabulous. But go ahead and look at your audience because that will
Mhm,
help them understand that maybe you think they're pretty too.
mhm, mhm. Elaine, we have eaten up this 4 hour. You know, you and I, we can talk forever though. So, this is always a fun thing. If you, so I'm gonna play us out with my very cheesy, corny outro. Um, Guys, anyone who wants to, if you can't find Elaine for any reason, even though I mean it's LinkedIn, you should be able to find her. Please reach out to me. I'll be happy to connect you. She is awesome and she is full of nerdy information, and I love nerds. So this is my wheelhouse. Uh, Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight on How to Win at Everything. Please make sure you like the show. Send a little bit of those reaction, what do you call, reaction comments, likes and loves or whatever. Subscribe, whatever you choose to do. But I want to thank you for visiting with us this evening, and everyone have a good evening. Elaine, you hold on for a second. And I'm gonna play my outro, and I'll talk to you backstage.
Thank you.
Ta-da!